A terrified wolf mother burst through a dark forest, her silver-gray fur matted with mud, amber eyes blazing with panic. In her jaws, she carried her injured pup, its tiny body limp, blood seeping from a gash on its side. The air stung with the scent of pine and frost, the pup's whimpers slicing through the howling wind. She stopped at a cabin's doorstep, where a flickering light promised hope. Inside lived Jack, a 52-year-old reclusive hunter, scarred by guilt after a deadly accident he blamed on wolves. His world of solitude was about to collide with a desperate plea. Could a man who hunted heal what he feared most? Have you ever faced a moment that forced you to confront your deepest regrets? Maybe you've pushed people away like Jack, hiding from the pain. This video is about second chances, about a bond that defies nature itself. A wolf mother trusts a hunter with her dying pup. What happens next will shock you. Imagine the stakes. A predator begging a predator for mercy. Can Jack rewrite his story, or will fear win? The forest's chill, the pup's faint cries, the mother's unyielding gaze. They demand a choice. What would you do if redemption knocked on your door in the wildest way? Ever faced a moment that changed everything? Drop your story in the comments. Jack stood frozen on the threshold of his cabin, the icy wind whipping through the open door, carrying the sharp scent of blood and wet fur. The wolf mother's amber eyes locked onto his, her low growl vibrating through the air, a mix of fear and defiance. Her silver-gray coat glistened with frost, her breath puffing in the frigid night as she paced a few steps back, leaving her injured pup at Jack's feet. The little creature whimpered, its golden-brown fur matted with blood, a deep gash along its side oozing steadily. The pup's tiny chest rose and fell in shallow bursts, each breath a fragile thread. Jack's heart thudded. He hadn't been this close to a wolf since the accident that stole everything from him. The cabin's warmth spilled out, the crackle of the fire inside a stark contrast to the forest's biting cold. Jack's boots creaked on the wooden porch as he crouched, his scarred hands hovering over the pup. He could feel the mother's gaze boring into him, her body tense, ready to lunge if he made the wrong move. Memories flooded back. 5 years ago, a hunt gone wrong, a misfired shot, his best friend's lifeless body, and the wolves he'd blamed ever since. He'd retreated to this forest to escape, building walls of solitude as thick as the pines outside. Now those walls were crumbling. "I'm not who you think I am," he muttered, his voice gravelly, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to the wolf or himself. He grabbed a first aid kit from a shelf inside, the metal clinking as he fumbled with the latch, his hands shaking more from emotion than the cold. The pup's whimpers grew fainter, its small body trembling against the porch's rough planks. Jack knelt closer, the smell of antiseptic, mixing with the earthy tang of the forest. He dabbed at the gash with a cloth, the pup yelping weakly at the sting. "Easy, little guy," he said softly, surprised at the tenderness in his own voice. The mother stopped pacing, her ears twitching, her growl softening into a whine. It was as if she understood. He wasn't going to hurt her child. But Jack's mind raced. He wasn't a vet, he was a hunter, a man who'd spent years taking lives, not saving them. What if he failed this pup like he'd failed his friend? The firelight cast flickering shadows across the scene, highlighting the scar that ran down Jack's cheek, a permanent reminder of his past. He wrapped the pup in an old flannel shirt, its fabric soft against the pup's shivering frame, and moved it closer to the fire. The warmth seemed to help, the pup's breathing steadying slightly, but the gash needed stitches, and Jack had no idea where to start. He glanced at the mother, still watching from the edge of the porch, her body a silhouette against the moonlit snow. She hadn't fled, hadn't attacked. That trust, raw and unspoken, hit Jack harder than any bullet. He thought of his own isolation, how he'd pushed everyone away after the accident. What if this wolf was showing him something he'd forgotten? For a moment, Jack considered calling for help, but the nearest town was miles away, and the forest trails were treacherous at night. He'd have to do this alone, just him and these wolves. The pup let out a soft yip, its tiny paw twitching as if reaching for its mother. Jack's jaw tightened. He couldn't let it die. He rummaged through his kit for a needle and thread, his fingers brushing against a photo he kept tucked inside, him and his friend, smiling on a hunt. The guilt surged, but so did a flicker of resolve. Maybe this was his chance to make things right, to prove he wasn't just a man who destroyed. The mother's whine echoed through the night, a haunting melody that seemed to ask, would he rise to the challenge, or let fear win again? The cabin's fire crackled, casting a warm glow across the wooden floor where Jack knelt beside the injured wolf pup. The air smelled of wood smoke and antiseptic, the faint metallic tang of blood lingering as he worked. The pup, wrapped in Jack's flannel shirt, lay on a folded blanket, its golden brown fur matted but cleaner now. The gash on its side was stark against its small frame, and Jack's hands trembled as he threaded a needle with fishing line, his only option for stitches in this remote forest. The pup's breathing was steadier, but each shallow rise of its chest felt like a countdown. Outside, the wolf mother paced on the porch, her silver-gray paws crunching against the frost, her amber eyes never leaving her child. Her low whines echoed through the night, a haunting rhythm that kept Jack's nerves on edge. He wiped sweat from his brow, the scar on his cheek glistening in the firelight. "You're tougher than you look, kid," he muttered, his voice rough, but soft as he began stitching the wound. The pup whimpered at the first prick, its tiny body tensing, and Jack's heart clenched. He'd never done this before. His hands were made for rifles, not sutures. The needle slipped, and the pup yelped, a sharp sound that made the mother growl outside. Jack froze, his pulse racing, as her shadow loomed larger through the window. "I'm trying, okay?" he said, glancing at her, his tone pleading. The mother's growl softened, but her eyes stayed sharp. Reminder of the stakes. The forest outside seemed to press closer, the wind howling through the pines, rattling the cabin's walls. Jack focused, his fingers steadier now, each stitch a small victory against the pup's fading life. The fire's warmth seeped into the pup, its shivering easing, and after what felt like hours, Jack tied off the last stitch. He leaned back, exhaling a shaky breath, the smell of pine and blood heavy in the air. The pup's eyes opened slightly, a faint glimmer of awareness, and it let out a weak yip, almost like a thank you. Jack's lips twitched into a half smile, the first in years. "There you go," he whispered, stroking its tiny head with a gentleness he didn't know he had. But the challenges weren't over. The pup needed food, warmth, and rest, things Jack wasn't equipped to provide long-term. He rummaged through his pantry, the shelves creaking as he pulled out a can of tuna, the only protein he had. He mashed it with water, the salty scent filling the cabin, and offered it to the pup on his fingers. It sniffed, then licked weakly, its tongue rough against his calloused skin. A small win, but enough to spark hope. The mother watched, her pacing slowing, her body less tense. Jack felt a strange connection forming, not just with the pup, but with her, a trust born of desperation. Then, a setback struck. The pup's breathing hitched, a ragged gasp that sent Jack's heart into his throat. He checked the stitches, they held, but the pup's body was still. Too weak, its tiny frame fighting infection or shock. Jack's mind raced. He thought of his friend's death, how he'd been powerless to save him, how he'd blamed the wolves. Now, he was fighting for one. The irony wasn't lost on him. He grabbed a hot water bottle, wrapping it in a towel, and tucked it beside the pup, the warmth radiating through the fabric. "Stay with me," he said, his voice cracking. The mother's whine grew louder, her paws scraping the porch, as if she sensed the danger too. Jack looked at her, then back at the pup, a question burning in his mind. Could he keep this fragile life alive through the night? Or would his past failures haunt him again? Have you ever fought for something against all odds? Share your fight in the comments. The cabin's walls seemed to close in as the night deepened, the fire's crackle a faint comfort against the storm brewing outside. Jack sat on the floor, his back against the couch, the wolf pup nestled in the blanket beside him. The hot, water bottle radiated warmth, but the pup's breathing remained uneven. Each ragged gasp a knife to Jack's chest. The air smelled of tuna and wood smoke, the faint tang of blood still lingering from the earlier stitching. The pup's golden brown fur caught the firelight, its tiny body a stark reminder of how fragile this moment was. Outside, the wolf mother's pacing had stopped, her silver-gray form now curled up on the porch, her amber eyes glowing through the window. Her presence was a silent pressure, a mother's hope resting on a man who'd spent years running from his own heart. Jack's hands still stained with antiseptic, clenched into fists. He'd done everything he could, stitched the gash, fed the pup, kept it warm. But it wasn't enough. The pup's eyes fluttered, its whimpers growing weaker, and Jack felt a familiar dread creep in. He knew this feeling. Powerlessness. It was the same helplessness he'd felt 5 years ago, watching his friend bleed out in the snow after that hunt. Went wrong. Back then he'd blamed the wolves, turned his grief into anger, and shut out the world. Now, as the pup struggled, that anger melted into something rawer, fear of failing again. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, the sound like a taunt. "I can't lose you too," he whispered, his voice breaking, the words meant for the pup but echoing a deeper loss. Then a sound pierced the night, a low, guttural howl from the forest. The mother wolf's ears shot up, her body tensing as she rose, her gaze darting toward the trees. Jack's pulse quickened. He knew that howl. It was the call of a pack, likely the mother's kin, searching for her. The realization hit him like a thunderclap. If the pack found her here, with him, they'd see him as a threat. Wolves didn't forgive humans who crossed their path, especially not a hunter with blood on his hands. He grabbed his rifle from the wall, the cold metal heavy in his grip, and peered out the window. Shadows moved among the pines, their eyes glinting in the moonlight, a chorus of howls growing closer. The mother growled, her hackles rising, torn between her pup and the call of her pack. Jack's mind raced, the scent of pine and fear thick in the air. He could shoot, drive them off, protect himself, but that would mean betraying the trust this mother had placed in him. Or he could risk everything to save her pup, to prove he wasn't the man he used to be. The pup let out a weak yip, its tiny paw twitching, and Jack's resolve, hardened. He set the rifle down, the thud of it hitting the floor a declaration. He grabbed a small jar of honey from his pantry, an old trick he'd heard once, that sugar could give a quick energy boost to a fading animal. He mixed it with water, the sticky sweetness clinging to his fingers, and gently dribbled it into the pup's mouth. The pup licked, its eyes opening wider, a faint wag of its tail sending a jolt of hope through Jack. The howls grew louder, the pack closing in, their scent now mingling with the frost outside. The mother wolf turned to Jack, her gaze a mix of gratitude and warning, as if she knew what was coming. Jack's scar burned under the weight of her stare. He was no longer just saving a pup. He was facing his past head-on. The fire flickered, casting long shadows as the pack's growls echoed closer. What would Jack do when the wolves arrived? Stand his ground, or find a way to bridge two worlds that were never meant to meet? The first light of dawn crept through the cabin's windows, painting the wooden floor in soft golds and pinks. The fire had died to embers, its faint crackle a quiet backdrop to the stillness that now filled the space. Jack sat on the porch steps, the crisp morning air carrying the scent of pine and dew. Beside him, the wolf pup slept soundly in the flannel blanket, its golden brown fur fluffed and clean, the stitched gash on its side already starting to heal. The honey mixture had worked. Throughout the night, the pup's strength returned, its tiny tail wagging with each gentle nudge against Jack's hand. The mother wolf lay a few feet away, her silver-gray body relaxed, her amber eyes softened with a trust Jack never thought he'd earn. The pack's howls had faded as the sun rose, their presence no longer a threat after Jack had stepped outside, unarmed, and let the mother lead them away with her pup's scent on the wind. Jack's scarred hands rested on his knees, the weight of the rifle he'd left inside a distant memory. The forest stretched out before him, its towering pines whispering with the breeze, their shadows no longer menacing but alive with possibility. He'd faced the pack, not with violence, but with a quiet offering, proof that her pup was safe. The mother had sniffed the air, her pack circling once before retreating, their growls replaced by a haunting harmony of howls that felt like gratitude. Jack had watched them disappear into the trees, the pup nestled in its mother's jaws, a moment of reunion that cracked something open inside him. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. The air smelled of hope, the sound of birdsong, a melody he'd forgotten how to hear. This wasn't just about saving a pup. It was about rewriting his story. Jack thought of the guilt he'd carried, the accident that had driven him to this isolation. He'd blamed the wolves, blamed himself. But that night showed him something different. Trust, even across species, could heal wounds deeper than any gash. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, one he hadn't touched since the accident, and started sketching the pup's face, the pencil scratching softly against the paper. It was a start, a way to honor what he'd learned. Maybe you've got your own scars, your own regrets. What if you took one small step today to face them? Try writing down a moment you want to let go of, or reach out to someone you've pushed away. Healing starts with a single act, just like Jack's. The forest community noticed the change, too. Word spread when Jack began leaving food for injured animals, his cabin becoming a quiet haven for creatures in need. Hunters who once mocked him now stopped by, inspired by his story, and together they formed a small group to protect the wolves, not hunt them. Jack named it Wolf Haven, a tribute to the mother who'd trusted him. He'd found a purpose, a connection, a way to live again. What purpose might you discover if you let go of your past? Maybe it's volunteering at a local shelter or simply being kinder to yourself. The smallest acts can ripple outward just like Jack's did, touching lives you never imagined. The sun climbed higher, its warmth a promise of new beginnings. Jack stood, the pup's tiny paw print etched in his heart, a reminder that even the wildest hearts could find home. What act of courage could change your life today? Take that step. Let it transform you. If this story moved you, hit the like button to cheer for second chances. Subscribe to join our family of dreamers, where stories like this spark hope. Share with someone needing a fresh start. What's one regret you're ready to release? Share in the comments, and let's grow together.